I'd like to welcome everybody to a Truth Equal Truth lecture. Today we're going to explore the book of Jasher. We're going to investigate this controversial topic. You have one half of believers believe it's an actual book. Another half believe that it was never a book called Jasher, and then we have a book that's currently circulating called Jasher. So let's start with the source information. Joshua chapter 10, verse 13 says, And the sun stood still, and the moon strayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. Now, we lose something in translation from the Hebrew to the English. The KJV presents Jasher as a noun, but when we take a look at the Hebrew, which says Sephar Ha Yashar, which presents the word Yasher as a adjective or a verb, basically meaning, isn't this not found in the book of the upright ones? The Septuagint doesn't even mention a Jasher in it. It's completely omitted that word Jasher altogether. It doesn't even have the phrase found in a book in it at all. So that's the first problem. We're going to take a look at the 1625 edition of Jasher. It was published by a guy named Joseph Ben Samuel. We do not know who the author is. Now, the book claims that around 70 AD, during the destruction of the temple, a Roman soldier found a manuscript called Jasher. Now, the problem with that is this: we do not have any manuscripts on file of the book of Jasher. We have manuscripts of the Apocrypha, we have manuscripts of all the Bibles in the Old Testament, all the books of the Old Testament. We even have a manuscript of Enoch. We have three manuscripts of Enoch, one written in Aramaic, one in Greek, and one written in the Ethiopian language. So we have all those manuscripts, but we have not one single manuscript supporting Jasher. Now, the book claims that they found it at the temple in 70 AD. Now, the problem with that is that I'm pretty sure if there was a Jasher manuscripts, the rabbis would have known about it. During the second century, when the Hebrew canon became complete, they left out the Apocrypha, they left out Enoch, they didn't even mention Jasher. So here's what we do know about the second century rabbis. Whenever they talked about the book of the upright ones, uh, Sefer HaYasher, they was always referring to the books in the Tanakh. Now, we're going to take a look at the 1625 edition of Jasher. Chapter 10 of this book happens to be a chapter that ended up disqualifying the book as a authentic source. The reason why: the historians came to conclusion that chapter 10 of the book of Jasher copied the Jewish historian Josephus, which was a 10th century Jewish historical historian or historical book. And it gives a false narrative of where the descendants of Noah ended up at. And the reason why, because the book of Jasher, the 1625 edition, talks about France, Britain, and the Lombardy people. the Lombardi people did not emerge until the 6th century AD. So there would be no way in the world a BC writer would know about the Lombardi people. And the historians that examined the book said that the 1625 edition of Jasher has a medieval flavor because they kind of tell when there's a writing styles of BC, there's writing styles of the Greek, and there's writing styles of the medieval time frame. So they concluded that the book was not authentic, but it fell into the category of a pseudepigraphical book, which basically means that somebody took the name of a famous person and put it on a book. But the issue is that when we look at the translations from Hebrew to English, it was never a name. It was always an adjective of a verb, Sefer Yashar, meaning the book of the upright ones. It was never a name. So the KJ people, the KJV translation, turned Jasher into a noun, which confused a lot of people. Um, the Hebrews basically have a concept called Hebrew Midrash, and that basically means that a lot of the rabbis would take, let's say, a small portion of the Bible and they would create an imaginary story to fill in the blanks. And they did this to teach people a lesson, and they considered it to be valuable for, teaching people different principles and biblical principles by taking a small story. I'll give you an example. They would create an imaginary story based on imaginary conversation between Cain and Abel, even though there's no record of them having a conversation, but they would create an imaginary conversation that falls in the category of the Hebrew the Hebrew Midrash writings. Now, the historians classify the Hebrew Midrash writings as pretty much made up stuff that was made up. They classify the 1625 edition of Jasher as a historical fiction book.